I never liked sympathy. It always felt like a handout wrapped in pity. What I craved was opportunity, something real I could mold with calloused hands and a stubborn heart. But when you're broke, sleep in your car, and can't even afford a warm meal, opportunity feels like a cruel joke whispered by the rich. At 18, I was that guy, parked behind a gas station in a busted-up '98 Chevy Malibu, living on canned beans and vending machine coffee. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't even have a high school diploma that meant anything. But what I did have was a second-hand laptop with a cracked screen and a stolen Wi-Fi signal from the diner next door. I'd clock into the same diner every night as a janitor, scrubbing grease off tiles, wiping tables that reeked of cheap ketchup, and smiling politely when customers barked orders like I was invisible. But the moment the closed sign flipped, that diner transformed into my sanctuary. I'd drag myself to the back booth, open my beat-up laptop, and disappear into code. Not because I was a genius, but because desperation made me obsessed. I devoured every free tutorial I could find. JavaScript, Python, UI/UX design. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. Every second not learning was a second lost to someone else hustling harder. I treated failure like feedback, not a verdict. If the app crashed, I rebuilt it. If the syntax failed, I rewrote it. Every error message was a lesson in disguise. Most people didn't get it. They saw a broke kid chasing pipe dreams. The waitresses would laugh. Still working on your billion-dollar idea, Steve Jobs? They'd joke. But Ava was different. Ava didn't laugh. She brought me leftover fries, split her tips with me some nights, and once even gave me her old hoodie when mine was too soaked to wear. She called me Mr. CEO. At the time, I thought she was just being kind. Now I realize she was the only one who actually saw what I was trying to build. I launched my first app at 21, a simple budgeting tool for gig workers. It bombed. Maybe 5 downloads total, 3 of them were me testing it. But I didn't stop. I worked nights, studied mornings, and failed again. Then came version 2, an expense tracker for small businesses. Better. A few hundred downloads. A few dollars in ad revenue. Enough to believe it wasn't all for nothing. It wasn't until my third app, Pennywise, a personalized savings coach for freelancers, that everything clicked. I built it in 3 months using every mistake I had previously made as a blueprint for success. No funding. No marketing team. Just raw persistence and word of mouth. By the time I turned 26, Pennywise had hit over 500,000 users. Then came the investors. Meetings in suits I could barely afford. Contracts I had to teach myself to read. But I was cautious. I knew how fast success could vanish. I stayed lean, reinvested every cent, and expanded slowly. I became a millionaire before I hit 30. But I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't buy a sports car. Instead, I bought my old diner. The one where it all began. Not for revenge. For gratitude. I turned it into a co-working space for underprivileged youth who had big dreams but no mentors, no equipment, no guidance. Some nights, I'd walk through the hallways, see kids coding, drawing, dreaming, and I'd remember the boy I used to be, cleaning those floors. That kid still lived inside me. Hungry. Determined. Grateful. It was during one of those nights, when I was craving something familiar and nostalgic, that I wandered into a small jazz bar on the far edge of town. I wanted quiet. I wanted to disappear for a few hours. And that's when I saw her. She moved between tables with a kind of quiet grace. There was something haunting in her eyes. A kind of sadness that felt familiar. Like someone who once believed in something deeply and had to bury it to survive. She wore a simple black uniform, hair tied in a neat bun, but her hands moved like they remembered something beautiful, like they used to dance across keys. She approached my table, smiled faintly. "What can I get you?" "Something strong," I muttered, not expecting conversation. She returned moments later with a glass of bourbon. As she set it down, I noticed her tapping her fingers on the tray. Not nervously, rhythmically, like she was playing music only she could hear. "You play piano?" I asked, curiosity overtaking me. Her eyes flicked toward the dusty upright piano in the corner of the bar. Used to, she said softly, before life got in the way. That line struck me deep. I knew that feeling. Dreams buried under bills. Passion replaced by survival. I leaned forward. I challenge you, I said with a grin. Play something. Anything. She looked at me like I was crazy. Why? Because you clearly miss it, and I want to see what you've been hiding. She hesitated. The silence between us thickened. Then, almost defiantly, she walked toward the piano. The bar didn't even notice her at first. People kept talking, glasses clinked. Then she began to play. And within seconds, the world changed. The first note she played hit me like a memory. Soft, tentative like a whisper from the past. Then came the second, the third, rising like a tide. She couldn't hold back anymore. Her fingers, unsure at first, began to flow with purpose. She wasn't just playing the piano. She was confessing something, telling a story without words. The bar slowly fell into silence. Conversations trailed off. Bottles stopped clinking. Even the bartender leaned forward, transfixed. The melody was soulful, but there was pain in it too. Regret. Hope. Every note seemed to carry the weight of everything she'd never said out loud. And I couldn't take my eyes off her. When she finished, the silence held like the moment before a storm breaks. Then, applause. Deafening, heartfelt, real. A few patrons even stood up. She just lowered her head, face flushed, and walked quickly back to her corner like she hadn't just stirred the soul of an entire room. I followed. You never should have stopped, I said. She smiled faintly. Life doesn't always give you choices. I offered her a seat at my booth, and this time, she sat. I'm Noah, I said. Sophia. Her voice was calm, but there was a slight tremble, like it had been too long since someone called her by name and meant it. Why'd you stop playing? I asked gently.
My mom got sick, she said.
I was 17. She needed round-the-clock care. My scholarship to the conservatory gone. I started waiting tables. One job turned into 2, then 3. Piano became a luxury. You ever record anything? She shook her head. Never had the equipment. Or the time. I want to help, I said without hesitation. She narrowed her eyes. Why? Because someone once helped me when no one else did. She believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. I've been looking for a way to pay that forward. Sophia was silent for a long moment. Then she leaned in. I'm not a charity case. Neither was I replied. But I was a kid who needed a chance. The next day, I sent over a digital keyboard and a studio mic to her apartment. I wasn't trying to impress her. I just knew talent when I saw it. And hers had been buried for far too long. She texted me that night. I played again. For hours. I cried. Thank you. From then on, we met weekly. I'd listen to her practice while I sketched business plans on my tablet. She began writing her own compositions, raw, intimate pieces that reflected the years she'd spent in silence. I offered to help her produce an EP. She hesitated at first, but finally said, if I do this, I want to do it my way. No labels. No pressure. Just truth. Truth sells, I told her. Especially when it sounds like yours. I funded the entire production, quietly, anonymously. I didn't want credit. I just wanted the world to hear what I heard. When the first track dropped online, I posted it on my social media, which had a decent following by then. No captions. Just, this is what soul sounds like. The next morning, it had 50,000 plays. By the end of the week, over 1 million. People weren't just listening, they were feeling. Comments poured in from around the world. This saved me. I haven't cried like this in years. Who is she? Sophia didn't know what to do with the attention at first. She'd spent so long shrinking herself just to survive that being seen again was almost terrifying. You have a gift, I told her one night. But gifts aren't meant to be hidden. They're meant to be shared. Her second song went even bigger. And this time, she recorded a video, just her at a grand piano in an empty theater, spotlight above, hands trembling. No filters. No edits. Just real. The industry took notice. Offers came flooding in. Record labels, streaming platforms, talk shows. And for the first time in years, Sophia stood in the spotlight and didn't flinch. She didn't accept every deal. She read every contract.
She took her time.
She protected her voice. And when she finally said yes, it was on her terms. People called her an overnight sensation. But she and I both knew there's no such thing. Her music wasn't born overnight. It was born in grief, sacrifice, and silence. And I had the privilege of watching it bloom. A few months later, she performed live for the first time in years at a charity gala I hosted for young musicians. The venue was packed. I sat in the front row. She looked radiant, confident, but when she sat down at the piano, she looked directly at me and whispered into the mic, "This one's for the man who believed in a waitress." The audience had no idea what she meant, but I did, and I cried. Not long after Sophia's gala performance, the world began to treat her like a star. People who once ignored her now begged for selfies. Her story, Waitress turns world-class pianist, was headline gold. Interviewers wanted the struggle, not the soul. Labels dangled money. Agents fought for percentages. Everyone suddenly had advice. But fame is a strange thing. It doesn't change who you are, it amplifies what's already inside. And Sophia? She stayed grounded. She still rode the subway. Still kept her thrift store keyboard in the living room. Still sent half her earnings to her little sister in college. What changed wasn't her. It was the world's awareness of her light. Meanwhile, I kept working. My financial tech empire had grown into something massive, spanning tools for freelancers, single parents, students drowning in debt. I had a full staff now, a sleek office, investors with shark eyes and sharp suits. And yet, with all my meetings, metrics, and millions, I found myself thinking about her. More than I expected. We weren't dating. Not officially. But we shared a rhythm, late-night texts, impromptu coffee runs, long walks where we spoke about nothing and everything. I never told her how I felt. I didn't want to risk turning something pure into something pressured. But one evening, everything shifted. She was scheduled to perform at a sold-out venue in Brooklyn, a massive theater with velvet seats and blinding lights. I arrived early, sat quietly in the back. I wasn't there as Noah the Millionaire.
I was just a fan.
But 10 minutes before showtime, her manager burst out from behind the stage, panicked. "She's gone," he whispered harshly to his assistant. "She just left." No explanation. I didn't wait for permission. I went looking. I found her in the alley behind the building, sitting on a crate in her stage dress, head in her hands. "I can't do this," she said before I even asked. "Talk to me," I said gently, kneeling beside her. "I'm scared I'll play, and they'll realize I'm not who they think I am. That I'm just a waitress who got lucky." I sat beside her, leaned against the brick wall, and exhaled. "I've built apps that changed people's lives," I said. "I've spoken at conferences, flown in jets, sat with billionaires. But some mornings I still wake up and feel like that janitor, wiping grease off booths. You never lose that voice inside, but you learn not to listen to it." She looked at me, really looked. "How do you make it stop?" "You don't," I said. "You drown it out with action. You show up anyway. You sit at the piano and remind that voice who the hell you really are." She stared ahead for a long time, then stood up, brushing off her dress. "Come sit in the front row," she whispered. "I need to see you when I play." That night, she brought the house down. Her fingers danced, soared, wept across the keys. The crowd erupted. People shouted her name like they'd known her forever. And in that moment, something shifted in her. She didn't just perform. She owned it. Afterward, she found me backstage and did something she hadn't done before. She hugged me like she never wanted to let go. Then she whispered, "You're my home." That was the night everything changed between us. From that moment on, we weren't just allies or friends. We were partners in every sense. Her success became personal to me, and she began to understand my world, too. She attended board meetings, not because she had to, but because she wanted to learn how I built something from nothing. We shared stories over candlelit dinners, brainstormed creative projects, dreamed out loud. We launched a foundation together, Harmony Futures. It provided instruments, studio access, and mentorship to gifted youth from low-income backgrounds. Sophia became the face of it. I quietly funded the engine behind it. Together, we created opportunities for hundreds of kids who would have otherwise been invisible. But no journey is without storms. The media started prying, linking her to me in headlines filled with assumptions. Waitress turned pianist dating tech tycoon? Power couple or PR stunt? She hated the attention. I hated that it affected her. And when one article accused her of using me for fame, she went silent for 2 days. When we finally talked, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Do you think I'd be here without you?" I took a breath. "I think you'd be here regardless. I just helped clear the path." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're wrong." I was ready to give up. That night in the bar, I wasn't just tired. I was done. "You didn't just clear the path, Noah. You reminded me there was one." That night, we made a decision, not just about us, but about the way we wanted to move forward. We'd stay out of the spotlight as much as we could. We'd use our platforms not to feed egos, but to fuel dreams. We weren't chasing clout. We were chasing legacy. A year passed. One filled with more music, more meaning, more movement than I thought possible. Harmony Futures had grown into a national platform. We hosted camps, funded scholarships, and built recording studios in underfunded schools. And Sophia, she didn't just become a household name. She became a voice for the unheard. But as her star rose higher, something inside me began to shift. I'd spent years building my company, thinking every acquisition, every zero in the bank, every deal signed in midnight boardrooms meant I was winning.
But now,
I measured success in smiles from children holding their first violin, in tears from single moms watching their kids perform, in the quiet joy of watching Sophia pour her soul into a piano in an empty studio. For the first time in my life, I felt rich. Not in dollars, in meaning. That's when I made the decision. I stepped down as CEO. People thought I was crazy. Investors panicked. The press speculated. Midlife crisis? Scandal? New venture? None of the above. I just wanted to be present for the life I had helped build, not the empire, but the essence. Sophia took it hard at first. "You worked your whole life for this," she said, her voice cracking. "I worked my whole life thinking success was something out there," I told her. "But it was always right here. With you. With this." She stared at me in silence, then said, "I wrote something. A surprise. You'll hear it soon." 2 weeks later, she performed at the Global Humanitarian Awards. I sat in the front row, surrounded by dignitaries, artists, and changemakers. She wore a flowing black gown, walked to the grand piano under a lone spotlight, and sat down without saying a word. Then she played. It started soft, almost hesitant, then deeper, then triumphant. I didn't recognize it at first. It was layered, complex, emotional, unlike anything she'd ever played. But halfway through, I heard it. A single melody, line woven into the chaos. It was the song she played the night we met. But this time, it had grown. It had survived. It had become whole. When she finished, the entire room rose in a standing ovation. But she held up her hand gently, signaling them to wait. Then she turned to the microphone. "This piece is called The Believer. It's dedicated to someone who walked into a dusty bar, handed a waitress a chance, and expected nothing in return. Someone who didn't just hear my music, but saw me when no one else did." She looked right at me. I didn't rise from ashes. I was handed hope. And now I pass it on. To every kid watching, wondering if their gift is too small, their voice too quiet. You matter. Your song matters. Play it anyway. My chest tightened. My hands shook. In that moment, surrounded by applause and chandeliers and cameras, I didn't feel like a millionaire or a genius entrepreneur. I felt like a kid from a broken neighborhood who once fixed jukeboxes just to afford a can of soup. And yet, there I was, witnessing something beautiful born from a single choice. believing in someone. That night, we walked home in the rain, no limo, no press. Just the two of us, soaked to the bone, fingers intertwined. She stopped under a street lamp, looked at me with that fire in her eyes, and whispered, "Let's never stop doing this." "Doing what?" I asked, brushing wet hair from her face. "Believing in broken people," she said. "Because sometimes they're just unfinished symphonies." I kissed her. Right there, in the middle of the sidewalk, rain pouring around us, the city alive with the buzz of everything and nothing. And I knew I hadn't just changed her life. She'd saved mine. Because she reminded me that behind every worn-out dreamer, every tired soul waiting tables, every silent pianist in a loud world, there's brilliance waiting to be noticed. You just have to look. So what did I learn? That success isn't measured in wealth. It's measured in impact. That one act of kindness can echo through generations. That a waitress can hold more power in her hands than any CEO with a gold watch. And that when you challenge someone to rise, they just might take your breath away.